bottom line is we're just having a go at Arsenal for being ugly but finding a way to win. And Manchester City are all very pretty and didn't find a way to win.
Whenever they've been in a position, City, to take advantage of a misstep from Arsenal, they've not been good enough to do it. And that's why we're not really going to get a title race. It still is a title race because it's 7 points. City have got a game in hand. They've still got to play Arsenal, but they're not good enough fundamentally.
Is it easy on the eye? No. Would I like my team ideally to be playing that? No. But Arsenal, for the reasons just given, do not give one hoot.
I don't think this is a particularly strong Premier League. I don't want to say that to denigrate Arsenal's achievement.
There's a lot of people within the media and football fans as well who are desperate for Arsenal to not win the title and want to try and pile on. And whenever they do something wrong, it seems to be double, triple, quadruple times worse than when other teams do a similar thing.
If you're a defender worth your salt, you say to Gyokeres, go on then, run at me, take the ball past me. He can't do it because he's not got that turn of pace to go past his man. I think long term, it's not going to work out for Victor Gyokeres.
Yes, it's Premier League All Access with the Saltmeister, who's going to be very salty today, I think. And Scott $1 Million Minto. Now, for some, I know, and Crook falls into this category, maybe. It's been a tough 24 hours. Your team might not have delivered the way you expected. The game you were posted at last night might not have delivered to your expectations. But can you please, both of you, promise me, absolutely promise me, that no matter what happens today, that you would expand your answers so that our listeners get the rounded experience, unlike one manager when speaking to TNT Sports last night.
For you, what went wrong for your team this evening?
Chelsea.
Unai Emery, leaning in to the narrative of the TikTok generation having a very small attention span. Hopefully both of you two will elucidate a little bit further than him. He doesn't really give you much when he's not in a good mood, does he, Scott?
No. Do you know what? I watched the game last night and then I actually watched the City Forest game. But the first couple of minutes, Chelsea 1-0 down to a really silly goal. And I'm like, oh my goodness, this is Chelsea again. From then on, they absolutely dominated. And look, I've said this well before Christmas when they're close to the top and people were saying that, they're in a title race. If Aston Villa finish in a Champions League place, even if that's fifth, that's a wonderful season for them. And obviously, hopefully, from their point of view, they'll win the Europa League. But they are falling off a cliff. He knows it, and you can see his frustration for sure, not just after a game, but during it as well.
He's had habit of this as well. He fell out with me on the opening day of the season. And he also had a problem when he was asked about the goalkeeper situation earlier in the campaign. Do you remember that interview? And his answer for every question was Marco Bizzot, Marco Bizzot. Marco Bizzot. He does get a little bit tetchy every now and again. Crookmeister, talking of people getting a little bit tetchy, was down at the Amex Stadium last night. Have you recovered from what you described to me as anti-football?
Well, do you know what? I came over unwell about halfway through that game. I had to come home and go straight to bed. I was freezing. I'm a little bit better this morning. I'm not saying it was Arsenal's play acting and their gamesmanship that made me feel sick, but who knows? Fabian Hertzler's getting a lot of heat today. We just recorded the Fiery Friday podcast with Adrian Durham. He's absolutely slaughtered Fabian Hertzler for the comments that he made post-match. He thinks Arsenal deserve more respect, which is ironic coming from the man who had a regular radio feature bashing them for about 10 years. I'm sort of in the middle. I think Hertzler had his narrative, as I think you would agree with. He was in the ear of the fourth official right from the off. There was some finger pointing towards Mikel Arteta. It had the desired effect in terms of whipping up the Albion fans, because we know that there have been times this season when they've not necessarily been behind the team and their manager, but they certainly were last night. What it didn't do was overly influence Chris Kavanagh, and I think he could have clamped down harder on Arsenal's time wasting. I know you've got some statistics about it, but the one that really got me was in the second half, probably as close as Brighton came to scoring, because as much as they were the better footballing side, they didn't create too many chances themselves. Jorginho Rutter fires in a volley from the edge of the penalty area. It's a good save down to his right by David Raya. He goes down for about 3 or 4 minutes, having made this save to his right, and I'll emphasise that, holding his left shoulder. Now, I'm not a doctor, but if you land awkwardly on your right shoulder, how do you injure your left one?
Well, Crook, as you know, I am a doctor, and I can explain that to you. He was play acting. He was definitely play acting. However, that doesn't really sort of justify exactly what Fabian Herzler did. And look, it was really interesting because he came out in the press conference and he said, Arsenal take longer than anybody else over corner kicks. They take over a minute. Not true. Their average time for taking a restart and a set piece is 44.4 seconds. But anyway, why let the facts get in the way of a good story? But he planted that seed in the press conference. Then he went into his pre-match interview and he made sure he said it again in the build-up to it to Danny Jamieson on TNT so that everybody knew it. And he was feeding that little seed into the minds of the crowd so they whipped up and put pressure on the referee. Listen, that's fair enough. I know what he's trying to do, and so do you, and you've already articulated it. Is he 100% right about Arsenal? No. Is he 100% wrong? No. It's somewhere in the middle. My opinion, for what it's worth, is that he came in with a narrative, wanted to whip up the crowd, wanted to influence the referee, and some of the crowd bought it, and some of the media bought it. Now, is it a talking point? Of course it is. But is Fabian Herzler trying to influence the referee as much abusing the dark arts as Arsenal slowing down the clock and feigning injury? Yes. So basically, it's just a different tactic to achieve the same thing, which is to gain the advantage in a football match. And the fact is that Arsenal are trying desperately to win the league. They're trying to break down a hell of a lot of low blocks. Now, look, some matches they face where everyone sits behind the ball and they don't come out and they've got to find a way to break them down. Other matches, that doesn't happen. So Brighton actually played a bit of football. And by playing a bit of football, it gives Arsenal to break and cause a problem, as they did, and score the goal, as fortunate as it was. But once that is done, they are within their rights to see it through. They have gained a 7-point advantage over Manchester City by getting through that game and winning that match last night. And when you want to be champions, I don't think they give two hoots about how they got through that match, Scott Minto.
No, and look, from a neutral point of view, and even going forward for the Premier League, do we want this sort of over the winners of the? And we don't know that Arsenal are going to be winners over the next decade. You know, I would say no. But if I'm anybody connected with Arsenal, from the tea lady to Mikel Arteta, I don't care one bit what everyone is saying here. This is about just getting over the line. 3 years of being the bridesmaid, not the brides. 22 years since they last won with the Invincibles a Premier League title. And they have a great chance to go on and do a treble, maybe even a quadruple, because the Champions League draw is kind for them. Look, I mean, I've just had there's a stat that's just come out. Taking all delays into account, Arsenal spent an average of 31.4 seconds to get the ball back into play from corners, goal kicks, throws, and free kicks last night against Brighton. So it's just not true what Fabian Herzler is saying. Is it easy on the eye? Is it easy on the eye? No. Would I like my team ideally to be playing that? No. But Arsenal, for the reasons just given, do not give one hoot. And it's all about getting up the line.
And this is the problem for Fabian Herzler. Actually, this is not the first time he's come out with a sort of suggestion like this, and it's turned out not to be the case. And the fact is that yes, they do delay restarts. Of course they do. Sometimes it's to get their dead balls set because they're coming up with an inventive play, which has been orchestrated by the guru that is the set piece coach, who's on a bonus, by the way, every time they score a set piece goal. Rumours about the fact that he's just built a new swimming pool are unfounded. But there's also the sort of like the idea of getting everybody forward for those set pieces should they decide to utilize that. So that does happen. And actually, we put a clock on them in the first sort of half an hour of the game. Every time they did a restart, we were timing every single restart. And I sent it to Crook. I think was it half time or before or after the match? Yeah, just sending him sort of like some of the stats from the first half. But the restarts weren't that long in comparison to some of the others that had been in the Premier League. So look, I think the other question is about the general nature of the Premier League and whether it's entertaining, Crook. And I think that is another a debate. And that's about the over-reliance on set pieces. 19% of all goals scored in the Premier League this season come from dead ball situations. That's not just Arsenal, is it?
No, and actually, I was looking at the sort of list of teams who are topping the set piece charts. Bournemouth, I think, whenever they've been in the Premier League, certainly under Eddie Howe and to a lesser extent under Andoni Iraola, have been famed for playing the game the right way. I think they're about 5th in the set piece table. So it is, listen, like it or not, it is a massive part now of football in 2026. But I do take your point. I don't think this is a particularly strong Premier League. I don't want to say that to denigrate Arsenal's achievement, because defensively, you had to marvel at them last night. They didn't have William Saliba. Mosquera comes in. Maybe could have got himself a second yellow card. I think there is possibly an argument for that. But anyway, take that away. Him and Saliba were exceptional. Yuri and Timber was brilliant. David Raya, despite annoying me when he went down, he did everything that he needed to do. Declan Rice bossed the game in midfield. So you can praise this Arsenal team for their robustness, their refusal to concede, their over our dead body mentality. And I do think Mikel Arteta will use these comments actually from Fabian Hertzler to create more of a siege mentality, which ultimately will carry them over the line. But from a forward perspective, Victor Gyokeres was miles off it again. They've got a problem with him, and we saw it with Trevor Chalobah at the weekend, and we saw it again with Jan-Paul van Hecke last night. If you're a defender worth your salt, you say to Gyokeres, go on then, run at me, take the ball past me. He can't do it because he's not got that turn of pace to go past his man. I think long term, it's not going to work out for Victor Gyokeres. Saka got a bit fortunate with a goal, but his numbers haven't been great either. So I do think there's an argument that Mikel Arteta is not necessarily getting the best out of his forward players, but certainly defensively, you can't level that argument. And this is going to be a title win that is built very much in the George Graham mould, as opposed to the Arsene Wenger one.
But it's not the first time that a defence has led to a championship. That happens all the time. There's an advert on the TV that says Antonio Rudiger has repeated the words of an NBA star saying, attack wins the headlines, defence wins championships, whatever it is, the famous line. That is what it's built on. It's built on that. And I don't think that, and I mean, I know that Alan Pardew actually said to Crook on air last night that Arsenal deserve an asterisk next to their name should they win the Premier League. Now, that seems a little bit outlandish, and no one suggested that Wimbledon in 1988 deserved an asterisk next to their name when they won the FA Cup. I'm sure that when Argentina won the World Cup in 2022, when they won it on penalties, we don't put an asterisk next to their name either. They won the World Cup. That Greece 2004, people do win things in different manners, and sometimes you go through a cycle like we are at the moment where it is just a little bit more attritional, Scott.
Yeah, look, I'm very much from the professional point of view. You just do what it takes, and it doesn't matter. And for, again, the reasons I've given. The only thing I'd say is, like, watching the highlights last night, and Crookie can tell me what his eyes said, something different. And there's also maybe another conversation off the back of this for another time. I saw, the goal itself was a mistake from the Brighton keeper. I feel that Martinelli did pull Viva down for a penalty, but that wasn't given. I think it was just
I agree with that.
Half time.
But their XG at one stage, and Sam's a massive XG man, was 0.01. And that tells you two things. They weren't creating much, and the goalkeepers had a howler. And actually, Pards tried to defend the goalkeeper, and it puts a seed out in my mind because, yes, it takes a deflection. Just close your legs, fella. What are you doing, Verbruggen?
It was definitely a mistake, wasn't it? I'm on your camp. I think it was a mistake. I know that there's some. I mean, if you speak to a goalkeeping coach, that they'll tell you, "Oh yeah, but he was off balance because it took a little flick and his weight was going the other way. He's got his legs up and it's gone straight through his legs."
Goalkeepers union, but maybe it's a chat for another time. And I'm with Emmanuel Petit on this. I do feel there's a lot of people within the media and football fans as well who are desperate for Arsenal to not win the title and want to try and pile on. And whenever they do something wrong, it seems to be double, triple, quadruple times worse than when other teams do a similar thing. I'm personally with Petit on that. But if I'm Arsenal, I'll go back to it. I don't care I sent a little text out on I've got a youth team group WhatsApp, and there's a few, so they're all ex-players, but there's a few.
Are they still alive, Scott? They're in your youth team?
Actually, I'm the youngest mate in there, yeah, believe it or not. And I said, look, give me your honest opinion. And they do, let's just water it down. They do not care at all what people say or how they do it. Just get over the line.
Yeah, and I think Fabian Hertzer actually has helped Mikel Arteta out in a sense because he's gone so far over the top with his pre-match comments and then his post-match comments that actually people have gone, well, actually, maybe Martin Keown and Emmanuel Petit are actually right because he's jumped on a bandwagon at the wrong time, I think. Manchester City may well have fallen off the bandwagon at just the wrong time. Some terrific goals at the Etihad Stadium last night, none least that brilliant back heel from Morgan Gibbs-White. But City dropping points against Nottingham Forest has had a major effect at both ends of the table, Crook.
Yeah, it was. I mean, great credit to Nottingham Forest. I don't think too many of us gave them a prayer going to the Etihad on recent form. But I'd imagine the dressing room afterwards was quite a surreal feeling because you've gone to the Etihad, you've gone behind twice, you've come back to get a point, you've scored two fabulous goals, two very different goals, but both superb in their own right. And then you find out that West Ham have won. So actually, it's now only goal difference that's keeping Nottingham Forest out of the relegation zone. So as good a point as that is, they are still right in it. I guess if you're Vitor Pereira, you're hoping the confidence are going toe-to-toe with Manchester City and getting share of the spoils. We'll see you through for the rest of the season. But it's going to be fascinating, this battle for the last relegation place. In terms of Manchester City, I think last night summed up their season. You know, they've got themselves into a position where they should win the game and should probably win it quite comfortably, but they haven't had the quality to see it over the line. Erling Haaland has misfired again. And whenever they've been in a position, City, to take advantage of a misstep for Arsenal, not that Arsenal did misstep at Brighton, but they've not been good enough to do it. And I think defensively that they concede too many goals, they give away too many chances. They're too reliant on Antoine Semenyo when Haaland isn't firing. And that's why we're not really going to get a title race. It still is a title race because it's 7 points. City have got a game in hand. They've still got to play Arsenal, but they're not good enough fundamentally. They haven't got that mentality that we've seen in the past.
Please get yourself some sort of cold remedy, whatever it is that's making you grumpy. Please sort it out because it is a title race. We had it last night. It is. Last night I was at the Amex Stadium when the Brighton fans were giving it all to Arsenal. Arsenal were keeping themselves in it, dragging themselves through, listening to little radios and following on their little mobile phone apps what the Manchester City score is. Manchester City have a game in hand. They still got to play Arsenal as well. Of course, we've got a title race. And when that full-time whistle went at the Etihad, it was about 20 seconds after the full-time race at the game at the Amex. And the Arsenal fans exploded with joy because it is a title race. It is a pivotal moment. Scott, you watched the game.
City are poor, Scott.
Yeah, no, look, I mean, the bottom line is we're just having a go at Arsenal for being ugly but finding a way to win. And Manchester City are all very pretty and didn't find a way to win against a team that, you know, is fighting for their lives but are right down there and are down there for a reason. Yeah, I know what Crookie's saying, and he's absolutely right. No one really expected West Ham to go to Craven Cottage and get the win, and that was a bit of an ugly win as well, but who cares when you're down there? But that still is a really, really good point. And boy, as we talk right now, Spurs are playing in the evening against Crystal Palace. They are in massive, massive danger because at this moment in time, with the table looks what it is, if they don't beat Palace, I fancy Spurs to go down. But in terms of the very top end, look, we still have a title race, but they're two massive points drops. There's no doubt about it that if they win the game in hand and they beat Arsenal, and they have to now beat Arsenal, we know how difficult that is. They're still relying on Arsenal to drop points elsewhere. That can happen. They don't have to lose. They only have to draw. But again, now it's not in City's hands. It's solely in Arsenal's hands. And we might look back at that as two massively drop points.
They go to West Ham next in the Premier League, Manchester City, live on talkSPORT, a week on Saturday. It's an 8 o'clock kickoff. Arsenal play a couple of hours earlier. Everton at home at 5:30. Good side, Everton. David Moyes has done a brilliant job. Arsenal will beat them. And I don't think City will win at West Ham.
Interesting. We'll see what happens. But you can't base your whole view on the whole season based on what you think is going to happen in 2 weeks' time.
Sam, you know what he's like. He'll say this, it's all over. And then Arsenal will drop points against a good Everton side away from home. City will get a great win at West Ham. And he'll say, I always said the title race was bang on.
Yes, I know. Listen, I found there is a place in London which does this thing called a happy drip. No, I'm not describing Crook. It's like an IV drip where you can get loads of nutrients, serotonin, all sorts, and you can just sit there for 45 minutes. You plug it into your veins, and you come out a lot happier afterwards. I think maybe we should get one of those for your birthday, because you're being a bit grumpy this season. You're moaning about the football too much. You know, you're not really enjoying yourself, okay? It's not a perfect season, but there's been moments of drama, and you've got to encapsulate those. You've got to feel those. You've got to be passionate about it. Crikey, I'm a bit worried about you. At the bottom of the table, we've mentioned West Ham. We have mentioned the result with Nottingham Forest. Tottenham massively in it. And maybe you're watching this podcast after Thursday, in which case you would have got a little video from me post-match at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, and you know what's happened there. But boy, were they thrown into it by the results, the series of results that happened during midweek. Leeds dragged back into it as well, Crook, after losing to Sunderland in a WWE match at Elland Road on Tuesday night. Now, I watched this game, and it was awful. It really was. And you criticise what's happened at the Amex Stadium, but Sunderland went to Leeds to try and spoil. And Leeds, who were the better team throughout the game, actually, probably lost the match in a 3-minute period where Rodon thought he'd scored, and then a handball at the other end gave Sunderland a penalty.
Yeah, and I think Leeds could have had a potential penalty in this game as well. So, yeah, listen, there are a few quite dour midweek games. Not that I'm being miserable again. I was at Bournemouth-Everton the same night. That wasn't fantastic. Again, you wonder if the long, hard season is starting to catch up with some of these players. I'm still not overly concerned about Leeds, to be honest. I know they're only 3 points clear of the relegation zone, but I just think they've got that spirit that other teams haven't. But by the way, doesn't it just sum up the importance of Granit Xhaka to Sunderland? He's come back into the team. They weren't winning games. They've taken 4 points from the last 2, including a tough away game at Elland Road. When you talk about player of the season, they were doing this on Drive on Wednesday night when I was driving to the Amex. They were talking about people like Bruno Fernandes and Gabriel, who I think probably is the player of the season. Semenyo got an honourable mention, not just for what he's done at City, but his goals at Bournemouth as well. I think in terms of who's had the most impact on a team for the fee, Granit Xhaka is top of the pile for me.
Yeah, he came off the bench, didn't he, with just over half an hour to go at Elland Road, and he was on the pitch when they scored their goal, and he was excellent down at the Vitality Stadium on Saturday as well. And the quicker they can get him up to full
Just
speed,
having him back in the dressing room is
better.
massive, isn't it? Just that presence.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if you speak to Regis Labrie, as I did on Saturday, he said exactly that. He said, you know, it's not just about having him on the pitch. That's really important because he's the best footballer we've got at the club. But also, it's great that he's there to look after some of the younger players and to try and shape this team and bring this team together, because they are quite a young squad, actually. We should probably touch on the Super Chelsea, because they picked up a valuable 3 points away from home. And I know Crookmeister is pleased with himself because he tipped this, actually, that Chelsea would win. And I said to him, I don't know about that, mate. You know, going to Villa Park is a difficult place to go. However, they were brilliant, the Chelsea, weren't they? Especially after conceding that first goal, Scott.
Yeah, I think they've been playing really well. And we talk about the importance of senior pros and what Granit Xhaka has done. And this is why I think Chelsea is so close. What frustrated Pochettino, what's frustrated Maresca, two people that wouldn't normally walk out or create a problem with the hierarchy. That they've got some very, very good players, but to really go for the Premier League title, for the Champions League as well, you need those special senior pros. And we touched on it last week as well. But to come back from 1-0 down with the quality they've got, I actually, going into the game, said I fancy Chelsea here, but I'm worried about them giving away silly goals. So again, second minute, what happens? But the way they bounce back, Cole Palmer, absolutely superb. Joao Pedro looking, well, I think it was Liam who said he's looking world class. And on those performances, absolutely, Napoli as well. But Reece James and Palmer being fit, I've always said, just get them 90 minutes under the belt, a few of them, and you'll see what they can do. And they have been absolutely brilliant. They may not be leaders in the typical sense off the pitch in terms of these senior pros, but they are absolutely leaders on the pitch. And it was a brilliant performance, a brilliant win, and a win that Chelsea needed if they were to finish in the top 5.
Absolutely. And they're in that situation, aren't they? I mean, 17 goals now for Joao Pedro. That's a terrific return, isn't it, after his summer transfer? 17 goals this season for him. That's brilliant. I can't remember the last time a Chelsea player got 17 goals in one season, let alone by February. maybe Costa. I mean, what did Cole get the other season? He did really well. He scored a lot of goals, but over the
Yeah.
course of a whole season, not necessarily
Mm.
just in the first 8 months of it. So look, that's great that he's scoring goals. But they're helped out by the fact that people were dropping points. Manchester United dropped points to Newcastle after what was a fantastic winning goal, Crook. That last-minute goal from Will Asula. I don't care who you are, you ain't stopping that as a goalkeeper. Senna Lomans has been brilliant for Manchester United, but no one is stopping that. But it's a missed opportunity, isn't it? Because they were down to 10 players,
Yeah.
Newcastle United, for a very long time in that match. And obviously, Luke Shaw's got a bit of an injury at the moment, which meant that they brought in Tyrell Malacia. He just did not get close enough to Asula, who bed that in beautifully right at the very end.
Yeah, maybe that accounts for my somewhat grumpy mood today, because I tell you what, Michael Carrick had a face like thunder as he walked off the pitch back to the dressing room, and that was a pretty similar look on my face watching the end of that game in the bar at the Amex Stadium. I mean, yeah, brilliant finish, and fair play to Newcastle because they needed that win. Been poor at home recently, down to 10 men. They feel harshly, so to come back and win the game was brilliant from their perspective. Tyrell Malacia. Why is he still at the football club, this fellow? He was on a flight to Turkey, literally was at the airport about to fly to Turkey, and Jason Wilcox personally intervened. Why? He's absolutely useless. And as good a finish as it was shocking defending from Malacia. You can say, well, Luke Shaw was injured. Who else are you going to play there? Anybody. Get some bloke out the away end, because honestly, he is crap, Malacia. And that defending was terrible. And if you're in the situation where you've not taken advantage of playing against 10 men, just see the game out. I think that's why Michael Carrick was so frustrated. It's been coming, by the way, because they weren't great against Crystal Palace, found a way to win with 10 men. They weren't great at West Ham away from home last time they had a midweek game, got rescued by Šeško. They weren't brilliant against Fulham, and Šeško scored that late winner. So the performances have been fine margins. And I think the real test now of Michael Carrick and his players is how they bounce back, because they've got a huge game at home to Aston Villa after the FA Cup weekend. Obviously, two of the teams going for the top 5 positions. Then they go to Bournemouth. Bournemouth, 9 games unbeaten, but struggling to put wins on the board. So let's see what this Carrick revolution is really made of now, because it was a disappointing performance. Bruno Fernandes aside, I thought United were very poor at St James's Park.
Oh, he's turning on Carrick. You can feel it, can't you? You can feel it. Newcastle United in 12th have 39 points. And Manchester United in 3rd have 51 points. That is a gap of 12 points, separating 9 teams with 9 games to go. Manchester United, Arsenal and Chelsea sit in those Champions League places at the moment. I think the top 2 probably cemented. Then come Liverpool, Brentford, Everton, Bournemouth, Fulham, Sunderland, and then Newcastle, as I mentioned. Liverpool dropping points to Wolverhampton Wanderers. And talking of coaches that have done a good job to inspire their team, doesn't Rob Edwards deserve a little bit of credit, Scott Minto?
Yeah, absolutely. By the way, did I just hear that Crookie at the beginning of this said he had to shoot home straight after the game last night, and then he's just admitted he was in the bar watching United, probably having a couple of Guinnesses. But just thought I'd say that.
Medicinal Guinnesses.
Rob Edwards, to the point where I got a text from Sim at talkSPORT at about 11 o'clock at night saying, your mate Kerbishley got West Ham out of the doo-doo all those years ago. Do you think he'd come on the next morning? So I said, look, mate, it's a little bit late. But the fact that we're even talking about can they, and I don't believe they can, well, for me, I think is just sensational. The results that they've had, the performances they've had, more so at home than away, but still, you know, it's taking a long time where he picked up and he got a lot of stick, and I think rightly so. But it's taken a long time to try and turn this around, and I'm not suggesting any way they can or will survive. But if you can finish on a high, if they can beat Liverpool again in the FA Cup, maybe go on a good run, who knows what can happen. That feel-good factor at the end of a season, I'm telling you, would be priceless at the start of next. It would be very, very important indeed. So, he's done brilliant. I'm really pleased for him.
Well, you never know. You never know. Stranger things. No, actually, there's no chance. There's absolutely no chance they're going to stay up, I'm afraid. As much as I'm really pleased for them. And I spoke to Rob actually after the game, and I said to him, you know, your team are improving. He's like, yeah, we're getting better and better every single week. And you're absolutely right to suggest that will help them next season. Some people sort of suggesting that maybe they should just toss it off and not worry about the rest of the season. But actually, by putting a plan in place to play the way they are. They're getting ready for the next campaign and assault on the championship. And one thing we didn't mention, by the way, during the course of our chat about Manchester United and Newcastle was Crook's golfing buddy, Aaron Ramsdale, stopping Crook's Manchester United from getting all 3 points. Have you had any text exchanges with your friend?
Funnily enough, no. But he made some brilliant saves, didn't he? And I'm pleased for him because it's been a difficult season, I think, for Ramsdale since going up there. I think he went up there thinking he would be number one. Obviously, Nick Pope has been in that position for most of the season. Big call from Eddie Howe to take Pope out the firing line after a mistake, but you've got to say it's one that paid off, and Ramsdale's got the jersey now. Good luck to him for the rest of the season, because I think when it comes to the two goalkeepers underneath Jordan Pickford come the World Cup, I think it's open to debate, isn't it? Who actually makes it?
Henderson definitely is in there. And then I think after that, I think it's who is next. However, that's not what he said, by the way, when the camera wasn't rolling. Just so you know, it was a little bit more disparaging. On to the weekend now. It's FA Cup 5th round weekend, and it kicks off with a rematch at Molineux. Couple of big games then this week in the FA Cup. Obviously, Newcastle against Manchester City is the big one, I think, on Saturday night. I think we'll talk about that in just a second. But if you're Wolves, you've just beaten Liverpool at home. What do you think here? Do you go into this game with exactly the same mentality and go, right, go again, lads, you can do it? Because you get your biggest win of the season, and the last thing you probably want to do, having achieved that, Scott, is then to meet exactly the same team again.
Yeah, but you almost like, let's continue this feel-good factor. We haven't felt this all season, and suddenly now, in a short space of time, we are looking very, very strong, and we've just beaten the side, so we know we can beat them again. Albeit, it was a bit of a lucky goal, but they played really well. And look, it was the first 45 minutes, maybe even 60, or the 60 minutes of our lives we'll never get back. But Joao Gomez in midfield, I thought, was the best player on the pitch by far. They look really structured. So, again, just try and turn any negative into a positive. We may be going down, and those Wednesday results certainly killed them after, they were hoping it would be the other way round. But why not think you can go deep into the competition, to the FA Cup, and keep that feel-good factor going? And somehow, where, you might not even be the worst team now in the Premier League by the end of the season, but you go down, you can finish on a real high. It might not be winning the cup itself, but getting deeper into a competition and just staving off that negativity. So absolutely go for it. Pick your best team and do exactly the same tactics. Because let me tell you, the pressure is all on Arne Slot.
Yes, and interestingly, because you said there was 60 minutes you wouldn't get back from your life. Well, actually, we've sort of said this a lot about the midweek games. Yeah, it's Arsenal that are getting all the stick for it. Like, they've set the agenda for the entire Premier League. Arne Slot waded in on the debate about set pieces and about there's too much of it. It's not the beautiful game. Ruud Gullit says he's turning football off. He's going off to live on a desert island because he can no longer stand to watch it. Yet Liverpool have started to score all their goals from set pieces, Crook.
Well, yeah, since they changed set piece coaches, so if you can't beat them, join them.
Fired.
Well, yeah, but it was ironic, wasn't it, that obviously Arne Slot came out and bemoaned the style of play. I think he was having a pop at Arsenal before this game, and then they absolutely stunk the place out. And actually, if you speak to Liverpool fans, the big issue they've got this season is they don't move the ball quickly enough. They don't play with enough intensity, and that's why they're losing games. And I do feel like this game is a big one for Arne Slot, because certainly from a Liverpool fans' perspective, many more are now advocating for a new manager to come in than want Arne Slot to stay, which seems churlish on the back of winning the title last season. But I think he needs a strong end to the season, not just in this FA Cup, but they need to get in the top 5 to secure Champions League football next season. And I think they need to go deep in Europe as well. But at the moment, it's just not quite right, is it, at Liverpool? There's no question about that.
And I wonder whether or not we're becoming a little bit impatient as fan bases and media with constantly changing the manager. We've mentioned before that we need to look at sporting directors as well, because that squad isn't completely balanced the way they would like it, Liverpool, I think. And I do think they've been hampered by injury. Also, if you replace someone or try to replace someone like Trent Alexander-Arnold, you bring in Jeremy Frimpong, and he plays 7 Premier League games over the course of the season, Scott, you are in trouble, aren't you? Because you haven't got the resources that you had 12 months ago.
Yeah, Conor Bradley's been injured as well, and constantly injured. Obviously, had that horrible injury, will be out for some time.
Leone, who was the centre back that they brought in that was supposed to help out and take the pressure off the other two, he picked up an ACL.
Yeah, I mean, I'll criticise Liverpool fans just in one instance. They were having a pop at Trent, and I don't think people realise just how good Trent was. He wasn't as bad defensively, although he isn't a brilliant right back defensively. But going forward, what he gave that team was just sensational, and maybe he made Mo Salah look a much better player. In the way that he played. But I will defend Liverpool fans in saying that these are one of the most loyal sets of fans out there. And to win the title and now to look like you might not even finish in a Champions League place, so top 5, that's a massive drop. And
Absolutely.
That's a drop that shouldn't be happening. And so Arne Slot, for me, this FA Cup is massively important. If they can go on and win it, it'll be much, much easier to win the FA Cup. I don't know if it's much easier because the Premier League boys are in there, but easier to win the FA Cup than it will be the Champions League. So he's got to go big on this. But if he doesn't finish in the top 5, I really like him and I want him to stay. But especially with Xabi Alonso just in the shadows, to go from title to not even playing Champions League next season, that's a massive, massive drop.
Here's a question, and listen, this is not with any bias or it's not laden with sort of any, it's not a loaded question to try and catch anybody out. How good a manager is he?
Listen, I don't think you can take away what he did last season. To come in, and they didn't spend any money in the summer transfer window, but he changed the playing style, and it brought them only their second Premier League title, their first with fans inside the stadium. So those are memories that I think will last for a lifetime. And they've had a lot of misfortune and situations that any manager would struggle to deal with. Diogo Jota's passing in such tragic circumstances cannot and should not be understated. And when we talk about Liverpool, you have to include that as part of the conversation, because you had players in that dressing room who were mourning for a teammate and a close friend. You had a lot of new signings coming into a dressing room and probably didn't know how to handle that environment. They spent huge money on Florian Wirtz, and I think he's taken a bit of time to adapt to the Premier League, or his teammates have taken a while to adapt to his wavelength, shall we say. And the Alexander Isak situation, again, a British record signing, you've written off the season as far as he's concerned due to injury. So I think it would be a little bit harsh to say he's not a very good manager. I think he proved himself to be a good manager last season. And if I was a Liverpool fan, and obviously I'm not, I would feel like he's got enough credit in the bank to get a pre-season under his belt and to have another season with Isak fit, with Wirtz fully firing, and without the tragic circumstances that he went into with this season.
And I think the reason I asked the question, Scott, is exactly that. If you analyse it over the course of a whole period, this is a guy that walked into a dressing room after the most inspirational Liverpool manager of modern times had walked out. He inherited a team that had sort of hit the crossbar over a couple of seasons and weren't achieving big things, and led them to a Premier League title. And bear in mind that Liverpool, the football club, had been waiting 30 years to win their first title, to get a second one just a few years later. That was a terrific, terrific achievement. And he did so with minimum fuss, and the way he handled himself during that period, I thought was terrific. I don't think any manager of any caliber could have been able to handle the situations that have unfolded at Liverpool since the summer. And I'm talking about the contract situation that he had to deal with Van Dijk, Salah, Trent Alexander-Arnold, the departure of a brilliant player in Trent Alexander-Arnold. The death of a teammate in a dressing room is always going to have a seismic effect. And if you don't think that that's going to upset the timbre of the dressing room, the way that everybody gels and the mood, then I'm afraid that you're wrong, because it is. It's going to cause problems. Then you add into the fact that they brought in a load of new players that were there essentially to take the place of some of those that were still part of that title-winning group. And then you've got another thing for him to sort of try and blend and negotiate. So I think as much as he's made mistakes and he's said some really silly things in press conferences which have poured the attention on him. Actually, he's probably dealt with it about as best as anyone could. I don't think that anybody could have done any better. Do you, Scott?
I mean, it's a hypothetical question. I don't know, but what I think you two have nailed it. You absolutely nailed it in terms of what's happened on and off the pitch. Diogo Jota, you cannot begin to understand how that dressing room. You know, you walk in there and he's not there anymore, and he was a lively, popular guy, and you feel it. You absolutely feel that he's not there. That and I look at what happened to Pep Guardiola last season in terms of, I'm just talking on the pitch now, forget off the pitch, although you can't. Granted, one of, if not the best modern manager around and one of the best ever, and yet he couldn't turn around what happened last season. It's not, you can't just do it just like that. I mean, you've already given mitigating circumstances. And I think the way he comes across, I think he's a really classy guy. And the only thing really that you kind of haven't mentioned is, although you kind of alluded to it, he won the title with the Jurgen Klopp side that Jurgen Klopp couldn't win the title with. So the fact that he came in, he slowed them down a little bit, as Crookie was saying, changed the tactics a little bit, but still allowed the attacking players to really blossom, to deal with what you're saying about those three players where everyone's saying, he's got to sign, got to sign. I thought he was absolutely superb. And the way he's dealt with the passing of Diogo Jota and just generally being asked questions where you know certain journalists are just trying to poke the bear. I think he deserves another year because you look at Isak, we haven't really seen him. Wirtz is coming towards, you know, knowing what we know he can do. Ekitike, I think, has been brilliant, but the other signings just haven't been ready, and perhaps they need a year. And I think he needs a year as well. But whether he gets it or not, we'll wait and see.
Interesting. That is something that we will follow keenly. Can't believe you said that there are some journalists that poke the bear, bit out of order, especially talking to Crook like that. Right, okay. Let's talk about Newcastle and Manchester City. Now, us three, we get together a lot. We see a lot of each other, and we enjoy it. We enjoy each other's company. We like the banter. We have a little bit of fun together. We arrange holidays and nights out together because we're so close. Newcastle and Manchester City are sick of the sight of each other. Newcastle in particular are completely sick of the sight of Manchester City because it's the fifth meeting of the season. City lead 3-1. Will it be 4-1 after this weekend, Crook?
I don't know, and I know a couple of weeks ago, after they met in the league and City played well in that game at the Etihad, you said, I think they'll get their revenge in the FA Cup. I'm coming around to that at home, under the lights, to use that old cliche, at St James's Park. Newcastle taking confidence from what they did against United in midweek. City probably licking their wounds, having effectively, in my opinion, chucked away the title. I think it means more to Newcastle to win this game than it does to City. And I think that's why they'll get over the line.
I agree with you, and I've been thinking that ever since that game at the Etihad. And the reason is, Scott, I've seen the game plan evolve over the course of the season. Now, they did beat them earlier in the campaign, but recently that's become a little bit more difficult for Newcastle. But I've seen it. I know I can tell what they're trying to achieve, and it is going to work at some point. And I think under the lights, when they're at home with that atmosphere roaring them on, they've got as good a chance as they've ever had to beat Manchester City this weekend. I know that they struggle against the big boys at home. That has been a sort of tail of the tape over the course of the season. But I can't expect that Pep Guardiola is going to name the same side with a trip to Real Madrid in midweek as well.
Yeah, but Newcastle have got Barcelona on the Tuesday.
At home.
At home, definitely. But that would have taken a lot out of them last night, being down to 10 men playing that. So like with a lot of FA Cup games, team selection's absolutely key and fascinating. I think the Newcastle fans, Eddie knows them so well, and there is a really good synergy between the two. He won't want to be picking a reserve side, lose, and then going into that Barcelona game off the back of a bad defeat to City. I thought against not just the semi-final of the second leg, but where they created lots of chances.
They did, yeah.
And on another day would have been back in the tie. But I thought even the game they lost recently, they played really well. And credit to City for finding a way to beat a very good Newcastle side. So
absolutely.
Fascinating to see team sheets on both sides. But again, Newcastle playing City at home. The fans are going to be bang up in the FA Cup. I can't call this one. I really can't. And it's extra time and pens, isn't it?
Ooh, okay, interesting. So it could be a long night for whoever's covering that game. Crook won't be covering that game. It's far too far for him. What game are you doing actually in the Cup this week?
Fulham against Southampton, which I think is probably closest to my house.
I'm doing that one as well. I'm doing that for the television. Did you
doing
just
that
put your Did you just put your microphone down to sort of check out whilst we were having a conversation because you were too busy doing something else? You did, didn't you?
The visual mic drop. I was listening intently as always. Yeah, Fulham Southampton is an interesting one because the producers got on the running order here. 3 Championship clubs or 3 Premier League clubs against EFL opponents: Fulham, Sunderland, and Leeds. How strong do they go? Well, if I'm Marco Silva, I'm naming my best team because they're not under any threat of relegation. He's got to send out his best 11 and win this game and get a step closer to a major final. When was the last time Fulham managed that, Sam?
Well, Crook, if you'd done your research for the game, you would know that, wouldn't you? But you're probably going to say to me, can you send me a note for Fulham versus Southampton, please?
I'm ill. Leave me alone.
But I will say this. Fulham, probably the biggest club in the country never to win a major trophy. Maybe this is an opportunity. And they've sort of hit the crossbar, haven't they? Or not even hit the crossbar. They've sort of had a lot of shots that have been blocked and not quite got to the destination. They've got to quarterfinals recently. They did so against Palace. They did so against Manchester United. And it didn't quite come off for them. But this is a real chance, isn't it? Because if you ask that question, Fulham, Sunderland, Leeds, who actually puts out the strongest team? The answer is Fulham, because Fulham aren't going down. Sunderland probably aren't going down, but they've got to be a little bit careful not to get sucked in, even though they definitely won't. Leeds certainly can't afford to go full tilt because they are still within touching distance of that relegation zone. So good luck to Fulham. I think it'll be a good game. The fact that we're all going there on Sunday, it's a 12 o'clock kickoff. We should be finished by 2. I'm staying in London that night.
Dangerous.
Are we having a night out?
I'm coming home for a roast dinner. I've already ordered it.
We're
with
definitely
Mrs. Crook.
having a night.
I've already ordered it
Come
with
on.
Mrs.
Well,
Crook.
me and Scott are having a night out, and we'll convince Scott to do it. Crook to do it halfway through because he can't have a FOMO. Wrexham against Chelsea, big Hollywood game. Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney will no doubt absolutely love this. The idea of having Chelsea turn up at the racecourse ground. Is this a potential banana skin for Chelsea, Scott?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's going to be interesting, the team that Phil Parkinson picks, because, they're obviously chasing top 6 playoffs and maybe even more if they finish the season really, really well. But I just think the fact that it's Chelsea, that the whole world is going to be watching. It's a glamour game, isn't it? I would imagine he would pick as strong a side as possible.
I don't think he will.
You don't think he will?
They've got Hull at home Tuesday night, which is a big game in terms of promotion from the Championship.
Promotion, yeah. They want to get promoted more than
I think he'll rest players.
But sometimes he rests players, and actually, the ones that come in actually do quite well.
Yeah, there's every chance that could happen. But this is such a sexy game where, I mean, it's a conversation to have behind. If I know Phil Parkinson, he'll be saying, listen, I know what you're here. This is a great game, but it's about the league. But if they turn around and say, actually, no, we want you to try and go strong, it's going to be fascinating to do. Yeah, I think the whole game is a big one, of course, and against another playoff contender. But the bottom line is this a potential banana skin? Absolutely. I thought Chelsea was superb against Hull in the last round. Interesting, we didn't touch on the fact that Robert Sanchez was dropped from the game against Aston Villa. So who plays in goal with that one? I know Chelsea will make changes. We'll have to wait and see whether Wrexham do as well.
Yes, interesting that, isn't it? The fact that Chelsea dropped at Robert Sanchez after he dropped a cross in the game against Arsenal.
No, he got fouled. It was a terrible challenge on him, if you remember.
It was.
Could have ended his career,
Casper the Friendly Ghost gave him a nudge. Unbelievable. Do you know what? Listen, I've got no problem with Robert Sanchez, apart from the fact that he makes too many mistakes and costs Chelsea goals. But the most important thing from that game that really irritated me was that he tried to pretend that someone had pushed him over. And that clearly didn't happen. It was almost like, Robert, you do know there are 15 cameras, don't you, in this stadium, filming pretty much everybody's move, like every move that they make. You're not going to get away with that, fella. Anyway, that's for another day. Chelsea, though, have got a game against Paris Saint-Germain on Wednesday, which I'm going to, which I think is massive for them as well in the Champions League. And I think they can win that game. So bit of balancing to do for Liam Rossigna as well. And I do think it's one of those seasons where we could end up losing some people from the FA Cup because of the Champions League proximity in midweek. So maybe we've got another year of the underdog. Maybe last year it was Crystal Palace. Maybe this year it will be Fulham. You never know. I wouldn't be too surprised about that, Scott. I wouldn't. Wolves against Liverpool kicks us off. talkSPORT as we bring you all the games from the last 16 of the FA Cup, round 5. That kicks off 8 o'clock on Friday night. Saturday, Mansfield against Arsenal. Potential giant killing in the making. I wonder if Mansfield will waste time on set pieces and corners. Game Day Live takes you round the grounds with Adrian Durham, with Scott Minto and Chris Iwelumo. Wrexham Chelsea is 5:45. Newcastle against Manchester City, 8 o'clock live commentary on talkSPORT. And then on Sunday, talkSPORT 2 has Scott and Crookie doing the commentary on Fulham against Southampton. Then Port Vale versus Sunderland and Leeds versus Norwich. Absolutely everything is covered on talkSPORT, so make sure you tune in. And if you want to leave us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcast from, tell everybody about Premier League All Access. We'll see you on Monday.